Overcoming the challenges of flooding, as we just saw in that clip there. And joining us to have an understanding of that is Mr. Sulaiman Aribadu. Thank you so much indeed. He's an environmentalist.
Good morning.
You've watched and seen how the events of the past week have turned out, with NIMET making warnings and the hydrological agency also telling people that the water levels have really come up, and that the measurements that were recorded in 2012 are still being recorded as we speak, even right now. But we have seen how Niger State is facing one of the biggest crises from flooding in recent times, and how the government has responded. The governor himself has said that he cannot handle this alone and he needs the assistance of the federal government. You are an environmental expert. You've seen this, but this is not new to us. Are you disappointed to this point? Because a lot of people are concerned that if the government has been saying this and it's still happening even in 2018, then so much more is left to be desired.
Yeah, it's quite disheartening, and one commiserates with those who have lost loved ones. And unfortunately, we might see more loss of lives. We witnessed this in the Whitewater flood in 2012, and every year we knew every year, as a matter of fact, we witness flooding. It's just that the scale is not as high as we saw in 2012, and as we are likely to see, as we already seen anyway. Now it's just not yet at that level, but we're heading there. Unfortunately, we are warned. NIMET gives its prediction, the hydrological services gives its prediction. And we're seeing what is happening around us. It's important to also say that this is not a Nigerian crisis alone. It's happening around the world. The Indian axis is facing the monsoon. We're seeing what is happening with the hurricanes in the Americas and going towards Europe. And of course, in the Southeast Asia, even up to China. So this is the period, that part of the year where we witness this. And every year seems to be getting worse because of climate change. However, in the case of Nigeria, one would expect that having gone through what we did in 2012, we should be a lot more prepared. It's not that those things will not happen. These are exigencies of nature. They are above us somewhat. However, when they do happen, the impact they have on us are things that we can mitigate, we can reduce. So not much has been done since 2012 to address this. We've heard about the dredging of the river Niger. But it's not just a matter of dredging the river Niger, it's a matter of how do we really channel the water, because we know the water will come, the rains are falling. What kind of drainage system do we have? What kind of inland transportation, water transportation do we have? How do we channel water to be resource rather than being a calamity unto us?
So channelization, is channelization a remedy to this?
It's one of several things that we needed to do. Is one of several things. We needed to properly channel the water so that, for instance, part of the reason why we're having this challenge at this time is that dams are gradually being released. Dams that have held large quantum of water.
You mean the Lado Dam in Cameroon?
The Lado Dam is there, and there are other dams as well along the river Niger. Now, of course, if these dams are not released gradually, if they burst, that's going to be much more calamity, because then you don't have 1 hour to 1 people. It's just going to be water hitting them before. I mean, this that we are facing, we've heard the prediction, and when the flooding, when the water rising was starting, people along the water channels have been told that this is going to happen, and they have been warned to move. So it's one thing to ask people to move. It's another thing to actually work with them to be able to move. Of course, there will be people who feel like we will survive this. Like you see in some part of the world, like in the US, people will say, no, we can weather this out. But I believe that in Nigeria, people know that if you are stranded, you are probably going to lose your life. So people are ready to move, but you need to work with them. It's not.
If I may come in here, you talked about channelization. You've also talked about the release, the dams. Do we have enough dams on our waterways to even manage the level of waters we have, especially during the rainy season? Do we have enough dams?
Okay, so it's a function of what capacity of dams you're talking about. There's a general belief among environmentalists that major dams, big dams, have their usefulness in terms of some level of irrigation and hydroelectric power generation, but that they cause much more damage, especially to the environment and to communities and their livelihoods along its path. So, but you can have small-scale dams, you know, that helps people to do small irrigation and meet some of their water needs, which is not something we practice much here. We do not empower communities to do, and these smaller dams don't really cause us this kind of headache that we're seeing.
So if we had smaller dams, would they help us manage these waters?
Yes, because then you releasing, for instance, Lagdo Dam at source will not just hit everywhere the way it is. There will be smaller collectors to help retain it while the water goes down the line. It's not just a matter of having dams, it's also about where do the water go. It's a function of, are we dredging the river and maintaining it? Because it silts.
When you talked about what could have been done between 2012 and now, you mentioned dredging of the rivers. What about channeling the waters for use?
So that's a major thing. Of course, we have in the news that the River Niger was dredged. So it's not a one-off thing. It's a constant maintenance. It's just like the drain that goes across in front of your house. You see that it silts. So if you do not, just like our canals across Lagos, it easily silts. If you do not dredge, you won't have the value. And when it holds a small quantum of water, there'll be flooding, it spills over. So it's constantly taking care of it. But channelization is important. There are interlands where water is needed. There are parts, and if you take a country like the Netherlands, for instance, so this is where they know that they are sitting in water. So they're able to use the water to their advantage. Their buildings are designed to withstand water level rises. And the water is channeled in such a way that it's used for transportation, for tourist attraction, for irrigation, all sort of services that they do need water for. We have not come to that. That is not happening. It's just the local people who are farming along this water line that are able to do some channeling, and really that is not much. So in terms of state policy, in terms of state intervention to address, because these are capital intensive things, these are part of your national development plans, you know, because these two rivers, for instance, are major sources of livelihoods for millions of Nigeria. So we are not doing much in that regard. We are not working with the people when the flooding has not come to help them see why they need to do what